Being outside the EU will mean the Chief Minister of Gibraltar has fewer problems with governance. This according to Sir Peter Caruana, who told GBC he had to dedicate a lot of time to grappling with how to comply with EU directives and how to make them minimally damaging or costly to Gibraltar. His assessment of the EU's political assistance to the ROC is damning.
I mean, the EU has done as little as possible, as late as possible, and under maximum pressure only to do what we in Gibraltar thought we were entitled for them to do as a matter of our right and their obligation.
Sir Peter says there have been advantages to being part of the EU, including the fluidity of cross-frontier trade. He acknowledges that there are likely to be inconveniences and extra business costs after 2021, but says these challenges are not sufficiently grave for Gibraltar to worry about.
The consequences of leaving with Britain are less serious, in my opinion, than the consequences of Britain now negotiating for itself a close-ish, with privileges, future relationship agreement with the EU, and us not being part of it, because that does start to make us feel a little bit like being left out. And that has other reader crosses, and it could impact the way other people see us and our attractiveness as a future economic location.
The former Chief Minister points out that the UK and the EU will effectively start negotiating their future relationship agreement from scratch. Sir Peter says this means Gibraltar has no legal right to be part of the agreement. It'll have to negotiate with Spain, who could veto the ROC's inclusion.
A negotiation, a three-cornered negotiation between the United Kingdom, Spain and Gibraltar.
Sir Peter does not think Fabian Picardo's government has made any concessions to date on the important aspects of sovereignty.
We don't want to wrongly signal to Spain that they've got a stronger hand in this negotiation than they have. I think we just need to keep our cool.
He said Brexit will affect people differently, repeating that the important thing for Gibraltar is frontier fluidity.
An adverse frontier fluidity, a difficult frontier fluidity, causes them as much harm as it might cause us. I think there will be short-term readjustments, and those readjustments may cost in terms of lost opportunities, lost businesses, lost business for some businesses, etc., etc. But given the importance of the issue, I think the price will actually be relatively small and relatively manageable, and that we will be able, without too much time passing, to make up whatever business we might lose, and to then make it grow further and faster as a result of being free of the shackles of EU membership.
In 1972, as a new opposition MP, Joe Bossano voted for legislation to accede to the EU. Now that we're leaving, Sir Joe thinks Gibraltar could not have planned things better.
The first time that the UK treated us as a separate nation was in 1973. And they signed with Aurelio Montegrifo, who was the Minister for Health, a bilateral health service agreement, as if we were two independent states agreeing to provide health cover for each other's citizens. First time in our history, highly important, nobody paid any attention to it. We were a separate state for UK and the same state for the EU. And everything that followed from that meant that the United Kingdom had to replicate the rights they gave to the other members by giving them specifically to us. What happens now? What happens now is that the UK has agreed that what we gained in access to the UK as a result of joining the European Union, we will not lose on leaving the European Union. I think it would have been extremely difficult to have achieved those rights in the UK market if we had not first been in the EU.
But would you say that we're also closer to the UK government now than we were when we entered the EU?
I think yes, to the highest degree that I've ever known in the 47 years. I mean, it's very significant.
So that means not 1 inch of rock, not 1 slice of calentita.
On the frontier, Sir Joe notes that the border with Spain will become the external border of the European Union and therefore will be at the mercy not of Madrid, but of Brussels.
Unless we've been able to agree, because potential agreements with non-member countries about movement up to a certain distance from the border, and those distances are bigger than the whole of our country. So there may be something that we're able to agree which already exists in other borders where you can move in and out with less controls, but only up to a certain distance.
And for his part, Adolfo Canepa says Gibraltar has always been problematic for the EU and Spain has always been influential.
And look, Joe Bossano and I were members of the House of Assembly when we took the legislation to Parliament entry into the EC. It was a good arrangement. It meant that we had certain obligations as well, particularly towards Spain and Spanish workers. We had to pay pensions to Spanish workers at current rates. So we took on certain obligations. But I also had experience myself when I was mayor. I attended a conference of the European municipalities, and this was only 1977-78, after Franco had died. And you could see that the Europeans were bending over backwards to welcome the Spaniards. I honestly feel that European organizations sacrificed Gibraltar at the altar of political expediency.
Mr. Canepa says he's optimistic that things will work reasonably well at the frontier as long as Madrid's current left-wing parties are in power. But, he notes, governments change.